Today on the channel, I'm going to be making Scorpion's Kunai, inspired by the new Mortal Kombat film coming out. And if you'd like to build one of your own, there's a link below to patterns, and without me rambling anymore, let's just go ahead and get right into the video. Okay, the number 1 and 2 patterns are cut out of 6mm thick EVA foam, and you're going to need 2 number 2s. Number 1s, I took a straight edge and drew a line down the center of this on both sides, so that I have something to line these up with whenever I glue them on. And to glue these on, I'm going to use contact cement. How contact cement works is you brush some onto each surface that you want to bond. You allow those pieces to set for 15 minutes, and then, like now, after it's been 15 minutes, I can go ahead and press the pieces together. Just keep in mind that with contact cement, it's a very one and done thing. If you don't feel confident with this, you could always try and use something like Gorilla Super Glue, which will give you anywhere from 2 to 10 seconds of adjustment time, where you can kind of slide the piece around a little bit and line it up. But with contact cement, once it's stuck, it's there. You can't really get it apart without a solvent or scissors. I have to make the actual hand grip for this, and for that I'm using 1/2 inch CPVC pipe that I'm cutting with a hacksaw at about 6 3/4 inches. There I sand it by hand. This helps any sort of adhesives to bond, and also helps a lot if you are ever going to paint raw plastic like this. You really need to sand it well first. Now that the sanding is complete, I need to glue on my handle. And to glue this on, I use super glue. I put a little bit around the inside of the rim here, and then just kind of twist and turn it on to try to evenly distribute the super glue. I can also leak a little bit down into on the sides of it if I need, but it's only going to do so much. So just to make sure everything's going to stay in place, I've had my hot glue gun heating up, and once I make sure that all this is straight and as even as possible, I'm going to use my hot glue gun to put some beads around the top in the corners where the 2 parts of the blade meet with the hilt. And as soon as those cool, I simply flip it upside down and just dump some excess hot glue down in there just to make sure that it's going to seal around the bottom of that foam. Now I need to wrap and cover my handle, so I end up measuring it at about 7 inches instead of 6 3/4, just so I have a little bit of overlap. And I cut it at 2 1/4 inches wide, which is just enough to barely get it around the grip. And to attach this, I use contact cement. Not the best for PVC, but with such a broad, flat area like this foam, it'll work just fine. Putting it on in theory seemed as simple as just lining it up and wrapping it around, but it was a little tough actually, and I did end up with a gap. I definitely did not get the seam lined up well, so I'm going to just cop to it. I had to fill it with some DAP Alex Plus acrylic latex with silicone. This is clear, it's not the fast dry, but it does still dry relatively quick when it's such a small amount like this. My 2mm EVA foam wrapped around the grip. I cut out a 1 inch wide by 3 inch long strip of foam that I'm going to wrap here and contact cement to the top. Once I get that piece attached, I seal around it with super glue just to make sure that nothing's going to come loose or lift as I seal and paint it all up. I'm going to repeat this process with a 1/2 inch wide by 3 1/2 inch long strip of 6mm EVA foam over top of this base 1 inch wide. Alright, now that that's on, I have another 1/2 inch by 3 1/4 inch strip of 6mm foam I'm going to wrap around the bottom. Alright, now that's all on, it's time to use my Dremel to shape all this stuff up. Typically run Dremel around 1500 to 2000 RPMs, and I just try to go as light as possible with a steady hand while holding it firm, but not tight, if that makes sense. looks like. Now when I'm done sanding it up, the CPVC 1/2 inch pipe and the hacksaw, I'm sawing it 1/3 of an inch wide so I can make a ring to put on the end. Once I get it sawed off, I'm going to hand sand it just like the grip itself, so it can either be glued or painted with ease. Put a couple of bands of EVA foam, 2mm, evenly spaced around the grip here. A ring to glue on the end. I marked with a Sharpie here this area here where I roughed up and gouged it up with an X-Acto knife. That's to help it glue a little better. I've already filled in the dead space here by shoving some scrap pieces of foam in there and putting a little bit of hot glue on top. And then on top of that, I sprinkled baking soda into liquid super glue. And that's how I'm going to attach this as well. Liquid super glue, I'm always saying, as in don't use the gel super glue. The Gorilla liquid super glue, the normal Gorilla super glue, it works okay, but just generic plain super glue, or if you get the ultra thin stuff from Amazon, it's really good. The nice thing about this is it hardens up like glass, but it doesn't shatter like it does, and you can sand it if you need to. Just be careful though, especially when you have some that is hard like this around something that's foam, because as you're sanding, if you're not paying attention or not careful, you can hit the foam and really gouge it up. But this is small and pretty discreet, and I didn't blob it anywhere. It's relatively even, and it feels sturdy, at least sturdy enough to hang on something. Now it's time to seal up all this foam. To fill this up, I'm just using Mod Podge, and I only applied basically one thick layer to the blade and just got the brush strokes going up and down. Move on to the grip. I just try to go around the grip as much as possible, which is a little tough to actually keep that even, but it can be done. I primered this with a pearlized black using my airbrush just because I was out of spray paint. But this PVC that's exposed here, I actually painted that with Tester's model paint. It's an oil paint and will bond to that, whereas the airbrush paint will just scratch off the first time your nail hits it. First paint I'm using after the primer is going to be put through my airbrush. It's Wicked Gold from Createx. And as far as the airbrush goes, I really just try to apply it as evenly as possible. I can't really avoid getting some overspray on the blade, but I'm mostly just focusing on the grip itself. From here, I move on to Pewter Rub and Buff. I'm going to use this on the blade itself and also on some of the rings and accents on the grip. Pewter Rub and Buff, it's literally just rub your rag in it and try not to have too much on it, or you'll get a really thick application, and just gradually build it on and build it up just like you would if you were dry brushing something. Lastly, I'm just going to seal this whole thing now that the paint's had 24 hours to dry with some Mod Podge, so that I don't have to worry about my hand wearing everything off and wearing all the paint down. Is painted and sealed. Let's try it out. I know, I'm a dork. So what I did was attach this to a piece of paracord that I have a clip on, which is clipped to one of those ID retraction deals. I got that at a Dollar General forever ago. It's not anything for the video, just a proof of concept. My idea was actually to take apart a dog leash, one of the retractable ones, but I realized the pulley would probably be huge, so this is too small, and the actual coiled spring that's in it I don't feel is quite strong enough for the weight of this, and I would prefer if it actually pulled to a stop here, so it was constantly pulling it back closer to the direction of my hand, but I chose to do a longer loop since I only have about 2 feet of cord in this, so that's just not quite enough. But once the movie comes out and I get a good look at the gauntlets, I may work on making something that's a little more. Or I could just put some plastic chain through the loop. This is a bit big. It was from my Ghost Rider. Still looks pretty cool. I'd prefer to have something smaller, or maybe just make my own. That's going to pretty much wrap it up. That was fun. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Black Unicorn Cosplay for recently tagging me in her retro Scarlet Witch tiara. She looked awesome and did a great job building it. I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you're not. Hopefully this video inspired you with your own projects. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.